Hey everyone, it's Amanda and this is my week 4 video. The first thing I wanted to say is please excuse my swollen cheek. I just got my wisdom teeth out over the weekend and I'm still going through the healing process. So this week we talked about emergency preparedness, and I think this of course is a very important topic when it comes to natural disasters because of course planning is one of the biggest things that we can do when we know a natural disaster is possibly coming, or just in general when we don't know they're coming. So, of course, the first term that I have is emergency preparedness, which is the activities that help to establish a state of readiness to respond to extreme events that could affect a community. This is to help minimize the adverse impact with active responses to promote the health and safety of individuals as well as the integrity and functioning of the surrounding structures. This can be achieved by planning, training, equipping, and exercising an emergency response organization. Something else that I found very interesting was that emergency responders, of course, always have to improvise the demands of whatever natural disaster occurs. And there's actually 3 different types of ways that they could improvise, which is the reproductive, adaptive, and creative. Reproductive is using a substitute to achieve the same emergency response objective. Adaptive being modifying normal routines or plans to achieve operational goals. And the creative being to just develop a new course of action altogether for an unanticipated demand. The next important concept I thought was the guiding principles of emergency planning. There are multiple parts to this, and the first being that we have to manage resistance to the planning process. Of course, most people don't like to think about a vulnerability to disasters, but that's something that we have to work through. The next being to adopt an all hazards approach, which means that we should be creating plans for each individual hazard that could happen in a specific area. And this could be natural disasters like floods, tornadoes, earthquakes, or technical accidents, which could be like toxic chemicals, nuclear power plant accidents, and the last being deliberate accidents like sabotage or terrorist attacks. Next part being to promote a multi-organizational prepared participation, which this should promote participation, commitment, and clearly defined agreement among all the response organizations, which would be people that are part of course, emergency management, the fire department, police department, and medical services. They must all work together to implement the emergency response plan. The next part, my cat's scratching my legs, would be to rely on accurate assumptions. When we're making these plans, they should be based on accurate knowledge of community threats or our responses to threats in the past. The next part, we need to identify appropriate actions while encouraging the improvisation, which means we have to plan and train for the most appropriate actions, but we still need to be able to be flexible enough in a situation in case we need to improvise. Another being that we need to conduct the training and evaluations, which means that we need to explain these plans to the administrators and the personnel of the departments, and then we need to train those of the emergency responses, which again would be like the fire, the police, emergency medical services, people like that. And the last part of that being to conduct a continuous planning process, which of course is effective emergency planning process is an ongoing thing. The hazard vulnerability, organizational staffing, structure, equipment, facilities, all these things change over time. So you must recognize these changes and be able to plan accordingly for that. And I have 2 more important definitions, which of course is the emergency assessment, which is basically just being able to detect and classify a threat, and this could be done by either local or federal agencies. And the last word being the hazard monitoring, which is just being continuously aware of the current status of a hazard as well as the future status of a hazard. So then, for my muddiest point, I just think what didn't make the most sense to me was we can spend so much money, time, and resources on emergency management, but when the time comes, we can still only do so much. It just blows my mind how unpredictable and hard to figure out natural disasters are, and they truly can be. There's no way that we can be 100% prepared for them, even though we put so much effort into trying. And my question to open a class discussion with would be, do you believe our emergency management agencies provide us, the public, with enough information and resources to be prepared for natural disasters? And why or why not? And also, what are some strategies do you think would increase our preparedness, if that's even possible? So I guess I'm just going to leave you guys with that.